Okay, guys, this is the final video that I have for you in regards to InDesign, but I'm going to talk through a process that I think is really important to share. It was something that another more experienced designer shared with me, and it has made all the difference as I've created work for clients, and I hope it will do the same for you. I hope you can even put it to use now as you're working on turning in assignments, and that is the refinement process that I go through when I work on a draft and push it all the way to a production level final draft, finished product. So with that said, in this video, I want to talk about the easiest ways that you can run through a large body of your work. In this circumstance, we've got 3 full pages, and then the design principles and project requirements to make sure that you're covering all your bases. Now, best case scenario is you have another designer friend or a classmate look at your work and point out to you where you're missing different project requirements or things that could be better. That's something that we're already doing in the critique process. But the refinement process, you need to double check your work as well. So when you open it up, make sure you do this process not immediately after you've been working on your document for a long time. Open it up and do this with a fresh set of eyes, which means you probably need to plan ahead a little bit to make this be the most useful. But without fail, make sure you do it, whether it's right after you've been working on things for an hour, or if you've done perfectly and decide to, open it up first thing in the morning of, and take a look at it then. So with that, let's remember the first thing that we need to cover is the project requirements. I'm going to zoom out really quickly in my document so you can see all 3 pages. We're going to look at it just really briefly. So let's refer back to the project requirements. That is something you're going to jump back into Canvas to look at. I have it written out on a piece of paper, so I'm just going to look through it. I have my pages set at 8 by 10 because that was the size that was specified. It's a 3-page article. Yep, there's 3 pages, and it includes a spread. Yep, pages 2 and 3 are my spread. I've pulled body copy from an article from either LDS.org or from BYUI. Yep, it's a conference talk. I have one pull quote. Yep, it's over here on top of the picture of Christ and his disciple. I have a 600+ word article. Yep, I've got that. The 8 by 10 size I have. Then let's see, the other things that I know that I had to look up. We're going to have to zoom in just a little bit for this. I have created different headings. Yep, there's one heading right here and another heading right here. I didn't fit all my text, and I can tell that right here. The sentence just kind of drops off, and I have that plus mark. So I'm going to zoom in. Right there, you guys. I caught something that I didn't do that was a project requirement just by going through this process. What I'm going to do is select my selection tool. I'm going to select this column of text, and if I don't include all of the text, I need to go ahead and put in another little piece that says continue reading on page. So I've just selected it with my selection tool, slid it up so that I have room to put that in within that safety bounding box. Now I'm going over to the left-hand tool column, selecting my type tool. I'm going to draw myself another little type box right here, make sure that it stays within my safety, and then I'm going to do it. I'm going to make sure that it's the Laura like the other, and I want it to be italic. And then this probably needs to be a smaller size, maybe even down to a 9. Let's try 9. So it says continue. You click in the box again to make sure it works. Continue reading on page, and I'm just going to put 45. 43. There we go. I like how that looks, but maybe I want it to be italic and bold, so that it really draws attention that this isn't the end of the article. That looks great. I'll be honest, I like it when it's right justified. I don't know why that kind of draws my eye there. So instead, I'm just going to go over and make sure that that is selected and then it's right justified. So that looks good. All right, now I have it on there. Perfect. So I've got that continued reading. I have 2 pictures that I have taken myself for this assignment. That's not really true. These are stock photos for my mock project, but you need 2 photos, 2+ images that were shot by you. And then everything looks good. I've taken care of my widows and my orphans and my footnotes. I've made sure that my hyphenation is taken off. I also have made sure, oh, you guys look, repentance is God's ever accessible. It looks like a hyphen right there. Let's see if I can get it up there. This text box right here, that looks like it's hyphened. Probably I would need to move that down. So repentance is, if I can get it in there. I'm going to go ahead, ever accessible. And you can tell I'm going to need to work for that. I don't want to waste your time while you watch me fiddle around with my pull quote, because repentance is God's. That's kind of weird to have that extra space on either side. So that would be something I would need to adjust, but you want ever accessible. That's a hyphenated word because it's a compound hyphenated. So it needs to have that hyphen there still, but make sure you watch for that. Even in your pull quotes, I see misspellings also in pull quotes because that means you're typing it in. Make sure you double check your pull quotes. Okay. So with that said, now it's time to step into the design principles that we have covered. Remember, C is for contrast, R is for repetition, A is for alignment, and P is for proximity. That spells a word that isn't very nice, but remember, if we don't apply the design rules, then that is what our work is going to look like. So, contrast. The two best places I can really recommend doing contrast is making sure that you choose colors that really work well together. You can see I went in and I selected my colors from this image of Christ and his disciple. I took that brown for the headings from actually this kind of yellowish brown scarf. And then I did the blue of the scarf. And you can see I also have repeated those colors up here. So there's repetition in color. And then there's contrast here as well too. The Until 70 is a different font from the Times 7. I will tell you straight out the bat, this is the big place to add contrast for this project. If I don't see you showing me some type of contrast through the type treatment, I will remind you in that title. If there's not contrast there, you're not striking my interest enough and you're not showing me enough contrast in the piece. So make sure you spend some time pairing some fonts together to make a title. An easy way to do that is just to look at your title and figure out what words are the most important. This one was pretty easy. I just divided it in half until 70 times 7. But sometimes with a longer title, there will be a word that really stands out. Maybe it's a talk about love, and the word love is actually in your title for the talk. Make that word big and then make the words that come before and after it small, okay? Think about ways that you can create contrast, not only in size, but also in using different fonts, okay? Then let's see, that's pretty much all with color or with contrast. I used it in color. I also used it in font size. Remember, we made our headings a little bit different. And then repetition, I've got, let's see, that's the next one. Yes, sorry. I had to think about how to spell that word. Repetition, I've got the same size of all of my text columns, okay? So that is repetition. I also have I have pictures on multiple pages, and then I'm using the same font for my body copy and the same font and size and color and stuff for each of my headings, so that all makes sense. Let's see, after repetition comes alignment. This is where those rulers and guides really came into play. You can see that I've aligned things up to the top corners, made sure that they hit the top corners and the sides. Oh, here's one that didn't work. Go to my selection tool. This image needs to be just a tad bigger to make sure that it goes all the way to the edge of the page. So now I've got that. It's aligned correctly so the image bleeds off on all three sides. I've got things aligned inside of the safety box. I've worked on my alignment of wrapping this text, right? Go back to that video if you have issues there to create your text wrap. Things are looking good there. So we've done contrast, we've done repetition, we've done alignment. Now finally for proximity. Proximity is a little funny here. You want to make sure that it makes sense. So one thing to double check is to make sure that the headers of the headings you've selected in your body copy are the same distance to the paragraph they belong to every time. So here you can see repentance is God's gift to us. It's really close to this one, and there's more space, breathing room up above it. That looks good. On this side, it looks good attached to the paragraph it belongs to. But what looks funny is that I've got an extra line of text right there. So I had to take that out. Now that looks better on the student's side, okay? So double check that. Proximity, making sure that the white space is consistent and that the elements are consistently put together. Another place to look for proximity is to make sure that you don't have white borders, that your pictures are aligned to the sides, but that they are actually all the way pushed to each edge where they need to bleed, and that also that they aren't bleeding into areas that they shouldn't be in. Finally, the last thing I'm going to look for proximity is this. Right here, Elder Lynn G. Robbins, that's the attribution line. Whoever wrote your article, if you have somebody who's a photographer and that photography by and a name is there, include that as well. Those need to be not just hanging out in space, they need to be close to the title, all right? Make sure that it's where it needs to be. It needs to be fairly proximate to who put it together. So until 70 times 7, who wrote the article? Elder Lynn G. Robbins did, all right? Make sure you have those items, that it's set off, but that it also has close enough proximity. So it's very distinct. It's in all caps. It has italics. There's 2 lines on either side. That makes it very contrasty from the other body copy that's close to it. But it's very obvious that this attribution line is different than this, and that this attribution actually tells us he's the one who wrote this talk and gave this talk at conference. So make sure you've got that. The other place for proximity that I'm going to really be checking is when you do your type treatment for your title, I'm going to make sure that you don't have, way up here in all this white space. If I had until 70 clear up here, you'd think, good grief, what goes in the middle, right? So make sure you've got things lined up to where they need to be, all right? So proximate, so go through that. Contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. Double check the project features or the project requirements, just like I did in this video. That will help you double check to make sure you've got everything you need in your project to get the best grade possible. You guys have this. I'm excited to see your work. This whole method of having a refiner's eye on a project, a much more experienced designer taught this to me, and I said, oh, so you used to do this when you were a new designer? And she said, no. I still do it now as a designer now at 25 years into this career. And that really has made all the difference in my work. My clients keep coming back, even if I raise my prices, because they know they get quality work and that I have an ability to pay attention to detail. You guys have that same ability. You're learning and practicing that skill here. And by practicing that, it makes you that much more marketable as you enter a career field. Having an eye for detail and paying attention to it and being able to catch things like that, no matter what you do, will come in handy. So keep that in mind. Practice the skills now. I'm looking forward to seeing your drafts.